The Wonderful Wizard of Oz Part 3. Where we last left off, the gang has just gotten to the Emerald City, and it is finally time to see the wizard. Everybody that they encounter in the Emerald City is like, we've never actually seen the wizard, but the wizard does agree to see one of them per day. By the way, allegorically, the wizard represents the President of the United States, who has maybe not so much real power, but again uses tricks to make everyone else think that he is a good ruler. First, he appears to Dorothy in the form that will look most familiar to us, this giant head from the Wizard of Oz movie. And he says, "You want to go back to Kansas? Well, you have to do something for me first. Why would I do that if you're not going to do something for me? So you have to go kill the Wicked Witch of the West before I will help you." And even though one would expect that they would all get the same response after that, everyone else decides to try their luck too. The Scarecrow sees a beautiful woman on the throne, which we later find out was just the wizard in drag. The Tin Woodman sees a horrible, ferocious beast with way too many arms. They both get told the same thing Dorothy did. And finally, the lion sees a giant ball of fire. So even though Dorothy is not excited about the idea of killing anything, they go off to kill the Wicked Witch of the West. Now, there aren't any roads or paths leading to the Wicked Witch of the West because no one wants to go there. That's what it says. And so they are told that if they just start walking west, the Wicked Witch of the West will find them and try to enslave them. One interesting thing is that the Wicked Witch of the West is not described really at all in the book. All it says about her is that she only has one eye, and that eye has telescopic power. But notably, she is not green. She is not described as green ever. I mean, it never says she's not green, but she's not green. So that's kind of interesting. I feel like that has to just be something that MGM did because they were all excited about Technicolor. What happens next can best be described as biblical. It feels very much like the plagues of Egypt. So first, the Wicked Witch of the West sees them coming, blows a whistle once, and calls 40 wolves to go tear them to pieces. The Tin Woodman chops the heads off of all 40 of them, leaves them strewn everywhere. Then she blows in the whistle twice and sends a flock of 40 crows to go kill them, and the Scarecrow stands up and tries to scare them off, but unfortunately they're not fooled, so they fly to him, and one by one, he grabs them, twists their necks, and kills them. Next, she blows the whistle 3 times and summons a giant swarm of black bees. The Scarecrow spreads his straw out all over everyone except for the Tin Woodman, and so when the bees arrive, they only see the Tin Woodman. They break all of their stingers on him, and then they die. So then she gets a few of the Winkies to grab some spears and go kill them, but the Cowardly Lion scares them away by roaring really, really loudly. After all other hope is exhausted, she grabs this golden cap, which is what she's wearing on her head, and uses it to summon the flying monkeys for the last time that she can. So this is kind of a genie's lamp situation. The wearer of the golden cap can summon the flying monkeys and command them to do something 3 times, and that's it. Then the cap has to just be given to someone else. So they throw the Tin Woodman into a ravine where he gets all banged up. They take the Scarecrow apart, spread the straw everywhere, and then put the sack part of him up on top of a tree. And then they tie up the lion because the Wicked Witch of the West wanted him to be harnessed up to do hard labor. And then they are too afraid to harm Dorothy because she has a mark on her forehead from where the Good Witch of the North kissed her, and that protects her from harm, so they won't hurt her. So they bring her and Toto to the Wicked Witch of the West. Now this one is a little bit of a stretch, but the mark on her forehead supposedly represents the support of the electorate for the populist agenda as it moved on its journey to Washington, aka the Emerald City. So they get to the castle. The Wicked Witch of the West tries to harness up the lion, but he refuses. So she tries to starve him out, but Dorothy keeps feeding him, bringing him food so that he can hold out longer. Now, if you recall, Dorothy represents the common people, regular Americans. The lion represents William Jennings Bryan, the leader of the populist movement, and the Wicked Witch of the West represents lobbyists, kind of big money on the West Coast that were involved in oil, gold, and railroads. So to me, the act of Dorothy giving him food so that he can hold out sort of represents the grassroots populist movement trying to support William Jennings Bryan any way they can so that he is less susceptible to corruption and lobbyists. They're kind of trapped there, but the thing is, the Wicked Witch of the West was not satisfied with just having them as her prisoners. She really wanted Dorothy's shoes because they have some special power. We haven't found out what it is yet, and Dorothy doesn't know how to use them. So she manages to steal one of them Dorothy gets really, really upset and throws a pail of water on her, and yeah, that's the end of the Wicked Witch of the West. I kind of wonder if it's because oil and water don't mix, and the Wicked Witch of the West partly represents big oil. The Winkies are, of course, happy to be free from bondage, and they offer to fix up the Tin Woodman. They get the Scarecrow back in working order, and they send them on their way back to the Emerald City. They also really want the Tin Woodman to stay and rule over them, which is what ends up happening at the end of this book. He rules the land of the Winkies. Now, I do want to real quick mention our first yikes moment, which is that the Winkies are referred to as the Yellow Winkies many times. And the reason that is a yikes moment is because the Winkies were supposed to represent mistreated rail workers on the West Coast, many of whom were Asian immigrants. They are referred to in this way several times. Now, granted, a lot of the things in the land of the Winkies are described as yellow or gold because of the gold rush and a lot of gold mining that happened on the West Coast, but everything in Munchkinland is blue, and they're not referred to as blue munchkins. But anyway, they go on their way, and they end up calling upon the winged monkeys to carry them back to the Emerald City, because Dorothy is now the proud owner of the golden cap. And then we come to our second yikes moment. So the flying monkeys allegedly represent Native Americans, and I was hoping this wasn't the case, and it didn't really seem like there was anything leaning that way until this moment. But on this flight back to the Emerald City, the king of the flying monkeys decides to tell Dorothy the story of how they were cursed to do the bidding of the owner of the golden cap. And it says, "We were a free people in the great forest, flying from tree to tree, doing just as we pleased, eating nuts and fruit." And basically, it describes them as not malicious, but definitely primitive. They play a mean prank on someone where they throw them into the water, and as punishment, they can either die or run away and stay out of sight, never be seen again. So that is all they're commanded to do until the cap falls into the possession of the Wicked Witch of the West. Outside of his writing of children's books, he also wrote for newspapers at different times in his life, and following the massacre at Wounded Knee, he made his opinions on Native Americans very clear by writing, "The whites, by law of conquest, by justice of civilization, are masters of the American continent, and the best safety of the frontier settlements will be secured by the total annihilation of the few remaining Indians." So it is probably safe to say that if there were characters in The Wizard of Oz that were meant to represent Native Americans, it probably would not have been flattering, to say the least. After that story, they make it back to the Emerald City, and that is where we're going to leave off for today, so we'll see you tomorrow.